Welcome to the fourth episode of Project Bonapartist, a multi-episode unrealistic scenario where Napoleon manages to win the Napoleonic Wars. Last episode, we discussed how a civil war broke out in France, all because of a simple succession crisis. So go check out that episode before you check out this one, if you haven't already. In this episode, we will discuss how the Spanish government in exile will collapse into multiple different empires and states. So, without wasting any of your guys' time, let's get into the episode. Now, the Spanish government in exile formed in 1815 after France successfully conquered the Iberian Peninsula and forced both the Portuguese and Spanish royal families out of this peninsula and installed Joseph Bonaparte to both of their thrones, creating the Kingdom of Iberia. For almost 3.5 decades, the Spanish government in exile has been chilling in its colonies in the Americas, with surprisingly not much going on in that country. Despite being under constant threats from Brazil and the United States. But that's not important yet. The Spanish government in exile has always been a hot mess between different groups, with each subdivision getting more and more divided from each other, culturally at least. For example, if you went to modern day Mexico and saw the culture there, then went down to modern day Argentina and saw the culture, both cultures will be completely distinct from one another, which shows to you how extremely divided this nation has been for the past 3 decades. This nation has only survived for that time frame because their government, the Spanish Bourbons, have been giving the population more and more freedom and privileges to do basically whatever the hell they want in the state. Now, remember last episode I told you the Spanish government in exile was sponsoring the native rebels in Guyana? Well, it wasn't the entire country sponsoring these rebellions, it was mainly a province called New Granada doing most of the sponsoring, which again shows to you how divided this nation has been for the past 30 years. Now, the Spanish Bourbons have realized this and decided, hey, we need to retake control of this country. So they did by passing a bunch of reforms and a bunch of laws which strengthened their control over the country and made these provinces less and less autonomous over the years. Now, obviously, this pissed off many of these provincial leaders because now they have less power over their respective regions, which may or may not lead to some rebellions in the Spanish government exile in the near future. Wink, wink. And oh yeah, we're gonna call this nation Hispania now because it's less of a mouthful, and also because that's the new official name of this kingdom now, the Kingdom of Hispania, so just roll with it. Another thing that pissed off many of these provincial leaders is because they're practically putting their money in a dumpster fire. Remember I told you guys that New Granada has been sponsoring these Guyana rebels? Well, Hispania has completely cut off aid to Guyana, meaning that the natives are now at the mercy of the Americans and Brazilians. This pissed off New Granada because they wanted to use Guyana and exploit the resources there so that way they can make their province rich. Now, the entirety of the Guyana region is completely occupied by either America or Brazil. But we'll talk about this conflict in a future episode. Now, since Granada has benefited the least from this, obviously they're going to be the first province to rebel, officially starting the Hispanic Wars of Independence. Now, at first, these strings of rebellions would be unsuccessful. I mean, a bunch of poorly trained rebels going against a well-trained army? Psst, in my dreams. At least until a string of Mexican rebellions will break out under the leadership of Agustin Jeronimo. I hope I pronounced that name right. If you don't know, this guy is the eldest son of our timeline's Emperor of Mexico, Agustin Iturbide. I hope I pronounced that name right. And for simplicity reasons only, we're gonna have him lead these Mexican rebellions. Now, just like the Colombian ones, these would be just as unsuccessful, kind of. You see, unlike the ones in New Granada, however, these will be sponsored by the United States. You heard me right, sponsored by the United States, who will take this time to distract the Hispanics by invading much of their sparsely populated northern territories, which recently have been filled to the brim of American settlers. The Americans will also take this time by invading the Yucatan Peninsula, a peninsula filled to the brim of Mayans who weren't Mexican nor American, but America decided to invade them anyways. Things are looking bad for the Hispanics right now, at least until another string of rebellions break out in the Rio de Plata. But if you're enjoying my content so far, consider subscribing. Here's a long list of videos that I'll make in the near future, so if you want to see them, hit that subscribe button. I'm also open to any suggestions you guys might have, so leave them in the comment section if you have any. Anyways, back to the episode. Now, these forces are being stretched thin. I'm talking about the Hispanic ones, by the way. Now, unlike these last two rebellions, this will be the most successful of them all because of these mountains, which will make it hard for the royalists to fight the insurgents. Now, what is the main character, France's role in this conflict right now? France, just like the Americans, decides to invade Hispania and take the territories that they really wanted, like the Leeward Antilles and Trinidad. Why these islands? Because number one, they're close to Guyana, which France really wanted back. And number two, who doesn't love to exploit the sugar plantations in the Caribbean? Am I right? Am I right? So they would go ahead and invade and eventually conquer these islands without much resistance. Now, things can't get worse from here for the Hispanics, right? Right? Well, no. Things just got a whole lot worse for them because Brazil has now entered the conflict. And just like the French and Americans, they decided to invade in order to conquer some border territories that they really wanted, like some border territories in Bolivia, Peru, and the entirety of Uruguay and Paraguay. Just like the Americans, the Brazilians will prop up many independence movements in South America, like the ones in Colombia, Peru, and Argentina right now. Wait, Peru? Well, guess what? Peru didn't want to feel left out, so its population decided to rebel against the Hispanic crown. Now, God one day decided to bless Hispania because the British government-in-exile, more commonly known as the Kingdom of Australia, decided to support the Hispanic government. Why the Australians out of every single nation on earth that could have supported the Hispanics? Well, it's because of one thing. They didn't want France nor their allies in the region to get too powerful because they were still bitter about losing the Napoleonic Wars thing. So they saw this war as an opportunity to contain French imperialism in the Americas, even though France is barely involved in the continent anymore. Received very little support because, I mean, you know how gigantic the Pacific is, right? So much of the support would arrive a few weeks later, which is too little too late for the Hispanics. Now, the Hispanic royal family was about to leave Lima, Peru, the capital city of the Hispanic kingdom, until they were captured and arrested by Peruvian rebels. A majority of the royal family was spared, except one woman, Maria Cristina. Why her out of all people? Well, it was because her eldest daughter, Isabella, was supposed to take the throne, but she was only a child, so she had to take control as regent. Now, since she was a conservative, she wasn't really a fan of all of these rebellions going on in Hispania right now. So she passed these reforms in order to strengthen the central government. This pissed off many Peruvians, who decided to execute her by a firing squad. The surviving members of the royal family were allowed to leave to the United States, where they became wealthy slave owners. I'm just kidding. All I know is that they're in the United States. After the execution of their leader, the remains of the royalist faction decided to sue for peace. This treaty led to American annexation of Baja California and the Yucatan Peninsula. France gained the Leeward Antilles and Trinidad Tobago. Brazil gained Uruguay, Paraguay, and some border territories. New Granada as a whole gained independence as Gran Colombia. Later in Mexico City, Agustin Jeronimo will get crowned as Emperor Augustine I of Mexico, with Mexico obtaining control over most of modern-day Mexico as well as Central America. This is great news for both America and France, is because now they both get to exert their influence indirectly across the entirety of Latin America, which will increasingly worry the other powers, especially Russia and Australia. But this conflict has led to three questions arising. Number one, will America become the most powerful country in the continent and eventually the entire world? Number two, will there be a victor in the Guyana War, or will it just become a stalemate between both Brazil and America? And lastly, number three, will these new independent states survive on their own, or they will constantly rely on American and Brazilian aid? Find out on the 5th episode of Project Bonapartist. This has been Awesome History, and adios, amigos!